Hello and welcome to Friday Live. I am your host, Strata lawyer Amanda Farmer. It is wonderful to be here with you live today. We are heading out to Facebook. We're going to LinkedIn. We are going to YouTube. I'm looking around like this to check that all those things are actually happening because we had some time changes. We had a bit of a crazy schedule this afternoon. I have been traveling. I have just got out of the car after 3.5 hour drive from Mudgee to Sydney. I had planned to be in my Sydney apartment in Bondi by this stage, which some of you have seen, some of you are familiar with. As I was driving in the Friday afternoon traffic, I was watching that GPS, I was watching that time, and I knew that I wasn't going to make it to Bondi in time. So joyfully, happily, helpfully, I have a brother and his wife who live a little closer to where I was driving, and I've stopped in their apartment. So I am coming to you live from the apartment of my brother and his wife. This is their home in the background here. They are in the background here. They are getting ready to head out. Tonight, we're actually going out together. I'll tell you a little bit about that. So there's a bit happening. They're not used to my Friday Live studio rules. So look, and I haven't laid them out. So whatever goes on back there is going to go on back there. Happy wife, happy life here in the background. My brother and his wife are newly married. So clearly the rules are front and center here. There's also quite a bit of tequila behind me and one next to me. So the apartment of the 20-somethings, that's where we are today. If you are checking on in, I'm just happy to be here on time, ready to talk Strata with you. If you're coming in, if you feel this energy, if you are super excited and a little bit scared, like I am, let me know. Say hello here in the comments on Facebook. I can see those. Daryl's here saying, good afternoon, Strata Renos. Hey, Daryl, nice to see you. Welcome. Olivia's saying hi to Daryl. I love that. I love when we recognize each other here in this space. We can all come together and be saying hello. Hello to you too, Olivia. Good afternoon, Amanda from Richard. Richard, you're coming in, I think, on a corporate handle there, but I think I know who you are. Nice to see you, Richard. Sheridan is here saying we have a Strata OC meeting at 6 p.m. Cool. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about meetings here today. So you're in the right place, Sheridan. Megan is here saying, hiya, Megan. Nice to see you. Danielle is saying, hi, Amanda. Thanks for the amazing chat yesterday. Mwah. My pleasure, Danielle. Look, Danielle, I don't want to out anyone. So if you wanted to post a little more here on the page about our chat or how you were able to book in, let me put it that way, how you were able to book in the chat, then you're welcome to post. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it at that. But it was a great chat yesterday, and I'm glad that you found that really helpful. Patrina is saying, hi. Hey, Patrina. How you doing? I am working on a small screen here, so I'm just scrolling down. David is here from Neutral Bay. Great to see you, David. Petra is saying, sorry, I'm on the train. Well, Petra, I totally get it. Those of you who've just come in wondering, where the heck is Amanda today? And why do we have a happy wife, happy life here in the background? I've had to jump out of the car, race into my brother's apartment because I wasn't going to make it to my own apartment in time to be live. And so that's where I am. I'm at my brother and his wife's apartment. Her name is Grace. She has a name. I keep calling her my brother's wife, Sean and Grace, my brother and my sister-in-law. And I'm very grateful to them to be hosting Friday Live in their apartment here today. I'm getting a LinkedIn user who says, hi, Amanda, you're looking great. Melody in WA. Oh, great. I'm so glad, Melody, you let me know your name. Sometimes I can't see the LinkedIn names, but wonderful to have you tuning in from WA at 2 p.m. Excellent. Good to be here. Sean is here saying hello. Cool. All right. Yes, I've had coffee. Yes, I had a coffee in the car on the way. I didn't get a chance to stop for lunch, but I did stop and have a break because you shouldn't drive for more than 2 hours without having a break. You will get fatigued. I stopped in Blackheath and I had a coffee and I think it's just kicking in. So cool. All righty. Now I'm just checking stars are off. No stars on. Excellent. We are good to go. Awesome. I just saw Marion saying, what a star. No, I understand now Marion's comment. We've had trouble with Facebook requesting people to buy stars, this annoying thing that they do for pages as a page gets to a certain reach and a certain following. Facebook wants you to buy stars, but we've turned that feature off. And thank you, Marion, for your comment. All right. Okay, today we're going to have a quick spin around to this week's podcast episode. If you haven't caught it yet, it's a goodie, as it always is, but I particularly like this week's one. We are going to talk a little bit about an interesting story that was in the news media. I'm going to say the international news media this week that I think it's important you're aware of. And I am going to touch on communications and communication skills simply because it has come up about 4 times this week in various forms, in various places. And I thought this afternoon was a great opportunity to talk a little more about communications and communication skills in the context of emails, email communications, and meetings as well. So we will get to that. Now, I am not going to be here for the full hour today, which is often what we do on a Friday Live, a full hour till 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, depending on when we start. Because I'm heading out to dinner, as I mentioned. I'm here at my brother's apartment, and we will be heading out shortly to celebrate our dad's birthday. It is my dad's 70th birthday, and I want to make special mention of that and say happy birthday, Dad, because he was one of my very first podcast listeners, Friday Live viewers. He is, I have to say, one of, if not the biggest fan of what I do here on your Strata property. And do you think he owns a Strata apartment? No, he does not. He does not own any Strata property. My parents live in a freestanding home, don't own Strata, but I'm pretty sure Dad listens to every podcast episode every week and always has input and always has a chat to me about it, and is one of our biggest fans. So special mention and happy birthday to my dad this week, who is turning 70. And I will be heading off in about half an hour or so to go and celebrate with him and with the rest of my family. We're going to the Hotel Centennial in Woollahra, which is one of our favorite places here in Sydney. So that is the plan for today. I might be able to convince Dad to have a little photo, and I'll come back around and post that later so that you can see him if I get his permission to do that. More of you coming in, more of you saying hello. So many of you saying happy birthday. You're saying happy birthday to Amanda's dad. Amanda's dad is Larry. He is Larry Farmer, and I will certainly pass on your wishes. He watches Friday Live. So I told him I was at a secret location. I just posted in the family WhatsApp chat that we have to say, I've arrived, I'm safe, drive complete, I'm at a secret location. So if he's logged on to see where I am, he'll see that I'm at my brother's apartment. Thank you for the happy birthdays to Dad. I will pass those on. Hey, Cheryl, good to see you. Nez is here saying hi. Patrina, did I say hello to you earlier? Emiliana is here. Wow, lots of you here saying hi. Nez is here. Megan Sheridan. Awesome. Sean saying, was Dad at the live event at the Masonic Center a couple of years ago? Yeah, so you've met Dad, Sean. Yeah, he was there. And Rochelle's saying happy birthday to Dad as well. I just want to scroll back up here. Danielle's comment. Danielle posted earlier that we had a great chat yesterday, she and I. And Danielle, the chat that she was referring to was our member call. So Danielle's a member inside our online community, and every member gets the opportunity to book a 1-hour one-on-one call with me as part of their membership benefit. So Danielle secured that benefit. We had our chat yesterday, and Danielle's just explaining that there in the comment. Hi everyone, I signed up to ISP as part of my membership. I got a 1-hour chat with Amanda. I sent her all my questions, which I've struggled with for months. No help from anyone. She was amazing. Thank you, Danielle. That's very kind, and thank you for sharing that. I think it's so important to be sharing the help that you're getting inside the membership, because I have a lot of people who come here to the page and say, oh, Amanda, I wish you could do a one-on-one with an owner. It's great when you talk at us and you give us all of this great information, but it'd be wonderful if it was two-way. Maybe you could do a case study, or maybe you could do a Q&A with the owner. And I find myself saying, great idea. That's actually exactly what we do inside the membership. So if you haven't heard about the membership, you want to find out more, you want to book one of these calls, 1-hour one-on-one with me, as Danielle has done, you need to head over to stratamembership.com. Rochelle might be able to post that one here in the comments. I didn't expect Danielle to be here and post that, so we don't have that one on the run sheet, Rochelle. But if you pop it in for anyone wanting to go over and find out more about what's offered inside the membership, not just the member call, so much else. And that's really where I can dig deeper on those individual issues, answer your questions, and be able to give you the type of guidance that Danielle has enjoyed this week. Awesome. Okay, so podcast episode this week, we published episode number 300, and I don't know, what was it? 48, 348, 349. I was chatting to the Drain Man, Jonathan Nichol of the Drain Man. And who's tuned in? Who else did this chat resonate with? Jonathan reached out to me, told me what the Drain Man was doing with plumbing in residential strata properties, telling me how they were able to save buildings thousands of dollars in money. Yes, Amanda, thousands of dollars in money to be rehabilitating drains instead of digging. And it resonated with me when Jonathan reached out, because I was having this exact problem. We have been having this exact problem in our own building with, as you saw in perhaps my email this week, flushable, not so flushable toilet wipes, where they're catching on the old drains. To be able to have a solution that doesn't involve ripping out plumbing and installing an entirely new plumbing system, I thought was pretty cool. So the Drain Man are not the only plumbers who do this rehabilitation and this relining of drains, but it's certainly an option to be looking at if your building, like mine, is experiencing difficulties with blocked drains because of these awful flushable toilet wipes, which are not at all flushable. So check out podcast episode 347. It's been confirmed here, episode number 347 with Jonathan Nichol of the Drain Man, if you haven't caught that one yet. What else has been happening this week? Rochelle drew my attention, and when I say Rochelle, our team member here, your Strata property team member, helping us out. She's here on my screen, but you won't be able to see her. So Rochelle monitors what's going on in the media for me every week and every day, actually, and draws my attention to any interesting articles that she thinks you too may find helpful. And often on a Friday, I like to highlight one of these. The one that I'm highlighting today, I'm just checking if I can share my screen with you. I think I can. Just share my screen with you. We've got a link to this article, and I will also hit the share screen button. I'm only working on one screen today, so apologies if I'm a little bit wobbly. This is it. Look at this heading. Florida man sets his apartment on fire as revenge against HOA. That stands for Home Owners Association. This was published, I think perhaps this time last week. This is news.com.au, World News. And it is a story of a Central Florida man who has been accused of intentionally setting his own apartment on fire because he was upset with his homeowners association. This led to an explosion with injuries and damages. And this is all set out in an affidavit for an arrest warrant. Now, this is a video. It's not the entire article here. You can head over and watch that video. You can see some of the images here, I think, on the screen at the moment. And you can watch that entire video if you would like to find out more about what's happened here. The reason that I'm sharing this rather dramatic story with you here today is because sometimes we have challenging relationships in strata buildings. And sometimes it is easier to, as a committee, sometimes as a strata manager, it is easier to dismiss those who are challenging. Sometimes we might say difficult residents, sometimes we might say vexatious, sometimes we might say annoying, aggressive, to describe the types of people that I may be thinking of. And it's easier to dismiss and ignore than it is to actually engage, interact, and attempt to solve a real problem. And this is not the only story that I've seen come out of the US within the last couple of months where a disgruntled, let's call it, unhappy resident has done something extreme in frustration at not being heard, not feeling that their problem has been acknowledged, has been properly dealt with by their homeowners association. So this man in Florida has set his apartment on fire. Clearly, there are some other issues going on there, not just issues with the homeowner association. But there are people in our world, and I'm sure some of you can relate, who can do extreme things when pushed to limits. And this ties into our conversation today about, I believe, communications and being able to communicate carefully, appropriately, politely, respectfully at all times, even with people who we may think are extreme or unstable or just annoying and vexatious and sending too many emails. The education that I'm starting to deliver now around communications is ignoring shouldn't be an option. Ignoring shouldn't be an option because it can lead to these extreme outbursts of behavior. And when we look back at the record, ultimately, if there are legal proceedings involved, if there's investigations about what happened to cause this person to reach this extreme, I certainly, as a committee member, and I suggest as other committee members and strata managers, you don't want to be the one on the record as having been sent multiple emails that expressing a problem, expressing distress that were simply ignored. I'm going to dig a little deeper into this because that also doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries around how communications are dealt with within our strata communities and how we have rules around appropriate communications, and we certainly shouldn't be accepting and inviting or welcoming or encouraging communications that are inappropriate, that are abusive, that are impolite, that are aggressive. There are definitely ways to deal with those. So that's today's article, which I thought fit in well with what we're going to discuss about communications. Yes, an extreme scenario of somebody who is clearly unhappy. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Some of you may have some stories. Doesn't happen to any of our buildings here in Australia, but something to bear in mind. We don't always catch that news about what's happening overseas. Just heading back over to these comments here. Scrolling on down to Danielle saying, oh my God, we spend tens of thousands on so-called flushable wipes. There you go, Danielle. Check out this week's podcast episode. Over on LinkedIn, one of our LinkedIn users who I did identify earlier, Melody, found you. Melody on LinkedIn is saying that there's a company in WA, Tunnel Vision in WA does pipe relining. Excellent, such a great resource here to be sharing. Sean is just commenting on this communications issue. How about multiple nuisance emails? Really glad that you raised that, Sean, because that's exactly what I am about to talk about next. And I've got a few random questions popping up in the comments here. Today is not the day for me to be answering random questions. We may have a random question day where I'll just sit here for an hour and answer random questions down the track. That sounds like fun, doesn't it? Fun for me. Today we are focused on communications. Let's get into it. Last week, Amelia, I want to thank Amelia for posting on the page this question about communications. It wasn't featured last week, but it's an important one to get to. Amelia said, how best do we help a committee to deal with unwanted communications? That is tens of emails a day from a rogue lot owner who's trying to make waves to change the guard, okay? How do we help a committee deal with unwanted communications, tens of emails a day from a rogue lot owner who's trying to make waves to change the guard? That sounds to me very much like Sean's summary question. What do we do about multiple nuisance emails? And Sean's just adding to that, like a person sending multiple emails with motions to go on an AGM notice after the notice has gone out. Great example there, Sean. Thank you. I said earlier that this issue of communications and handling difficult communications has come up so many times this week. Amelia's question last week, number one, it came up in our member call that we released to members this week. I was chatting to a member who was asking me, Amanda, how do I deal with passive-aggressive, her term, passive-aggressive communications from a fellow owner? In our member forum this week, somebody posted about litigation that is going on with a lot owner. An NCAT application has been filed. A meeting was then held online, and that lot owner attended the meeting. And the question was, how do we handle that situation, Amanda, where the lot owner is in the position where the situation is quite volatile. The lot owner is not happy with the owners corporation. They've turned up to the committee meeting. We've got the litigation on the agenda and we want to talk about it, but how do we do that when the owner is there listening in? And then finally, precisely this situation around communications and meetings, both of those situations have come up in my own building with my own committee within the last couple of weeks. And so with this perfect storm of communication difficulties, I thought today was a good day to share a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more guidance around how we might deal with those situations. I am going to start with the meeting example, because I think that's a good, clean one, let's say. Where you have litigation, it doesn't have to be litigation, NCAT or court litigation happening within your building, but it often is this way, where you have strained relationships. That was the word I was looking for earlier. Strained relationships with owners. And you just have a sense as a committee or a chairperson or a strata manager that an owner is attending a meeting, sometimes with or without a lawyer or with or without an agent, maybe a family member or a partner attending with them. You just have a feeling that they're there to cause trouble, to ask difficult questions, to prevent the committee from discussing what it needs to discuss openly about the litigation. And it's hard to know sometimes how to deal with that. If your meeting is happening online, and this was precisely my meeting this week that I was having, if your meeting is happening online, and if say it's a committee meeting, that owner is not on the committee, but they've logged in to be able to listen into the meeting. Number one, as an owner, they are entitled to do that. They are entitled to be present at a committee meeting. They're not entitled to address the meeting unless the committee gives them permission to address the meeting. So non-committee member owners can attend committee meetings online, in person. They're entitled to attend. However, only the owner can attend. They can't appoint a proxy, and they can't have their friend, their partner, their lawyer attend the committee meeting and speak to the meeting. Okay, there's no provision in our legislation for that to happen. That was my brother with no shirt on. Hello, Facebook. So important rules to understand there as a baseline. In the meeting that I was attending this week, it was helpful that I was there and I was able to clarify that because there was a feeling that perhaps this owner shouldn't be logging onto the meeting, and how are we going to talk about the case that involves this owner if they're here? And I said, no, this owner is perfectly entitled to be here at this meeting. However, when we start talking about the litigation, if we are going to be talking about advice that we've received from our lawyers, who is not me, advice we've received from our lawyers, then that owner should be invited to leave the meeting while that's being discussed, because the advice is privileged as between the owners corporation and its lawyer, and that owner should not be there to listen to that advice. And that owner should leave the meeting gracefully and accept that. If the owner doesn't leave the meeting gracefully, then the advice that I gave one of our members in the forum this week is that if you're controlling the Zoom meeting, kick him out. Kick them out for that part of the discussion and only that part of the discussion. Move them to the waiting room, let them know that that's what you're doing, and then bring them back in when you've finished discussing that privileged information. That's fair. The owner can be there otherwise and listen in, doesn't have a right to speak to the meeting. If they bring their lawyer or their partner or their family member, that person doesn't have a right to be there at all. You might decide as a show of goodwill that that person can sit in and listen as well, as long as they're quiet and don't attempt to interject. Online meetings are good for handling that kind of situation because you can record the meeting. I want to talk about that. I'm interested in how many of you are recording your online meetings, whether Strata committee meetings or general meetings. We don't in our community. As a matter of course, we have a lot of online meetings, Strata committee meeting about once a month or so, always online. As a matter of course, we don't record our meetings, held on Zoom. We don't record them. However, at the opening of this week's meeting, when it became clear to me that there may be some strained, I'll use that word again, strained, difficult, challenging conversations to have, decisions to make, some news to deliver, perhaps that some owners weren't going to be happy about, I suggested to my fellow committee members, why don't we hit the record button on this meeting? And does anybody object to this meeting being recorded? Nobody objected. There were many owners who had logged in for this particular meeting, which is unusual. Nobody in attendance at the meeting objected to the meeting being recorded. And in fact, a couple of owners said, that's actually a really good idea. We should do that for every meeting. And our Strata manager, who was chairing the meeting, pressed that record button on Zoom and recorded the meeting. Now, not only does this give you a great record of what happened at the meeting and maybe can help with minute taking and reminding people of the decisions that were actually made, it is almost always the case, in my experience, that when being recorded, people behave differently. When they know they're being recorded, they behave differently. And they're conscious that what they're saying is going in the books and records. They're conscious that what they're saying can be referred back to if ever there's a dispute about what was decided or how it was dealt with. And everybody just behaves a little more politely. That was certainly my experience earlier this week. And that's the reason why I gave that guidance to one of our members in the forum as well. So Olivia is saying our AGM is recorded by our Strata manager. Sometimes someone will record the SCM, but it's not a problem. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not suggesting anyone secretly record anything. Absolutely. It should be, if it's on a platform like a Zoom, it should be very clear that everyone's being recorded, and that does happen on Zoom. A little pop-up comes up and says, you are going to be recorded. Do you consent to that? If you stay in this meeting, you will be recorded, and you hit the button. I think it says, got it. Yes, I understand. Then everybody's on board. So it's saying openly, does anyone object to this meeting being recorded, is a good way to put that one on the agenda, on the table, and make sure that that's everybody's aware that that's what's happening. Danielle's saying, where do the recordings get filed and for how long? Yep, so the recordings become records of the Owners Corporation, part of the books and records of the Owners Corporation, and they should be held by the Strata manager if that's the person who is the custodian of your books and records. As for how long they should be held, great question. At least 7 years, I would say, being the maximum amount of time for a lot of our records in the legislation. The legislation says 5 years for some records, 7 years for other records. For other records, even records that aren't expressly dealt with in the legislation, there is a view that they should be kept forever because they're not listed in the legislation under the 5 years, they're not listed under the 7 years, so should they be kept forever? Where you have minutes of meetings, I suggest that they are kept for absolutely as long as possible, because even minutes that are 15, 20 years old can be really helpful to refer back to. These days with cloud storage, and I know in my practice, we don't have a limit on what we can store in the cloud, which is awesome. So I record every single one of my meetings that I have with clients, and they're all stored in the client file, and I keep them for as long as Google wants to be around, which I think is going to be for some time. So I would suggest keeping things like that for as long as possible. It's certainly not one of the express items in the legislation, recordings of meetings. So I can't point to an exact 5 years or a 7 years, but I think for as long as possible is a good idea. Okay, so that's recording of meetings, getting permission to record meetings, and just noticing how the behavior changes when people know they're being recorded. It's like having CCTV in the building. I say this about CCTV. It's not just to have a gotcha. We saw you parking in the visitor parking. We saw you putting the rubbish in the bin when it should have been in the recycling. It's on the CCTV. No, it's about residents understanding that there is CCTV in the building, and that their behavior changes when people know they're being watched. So great investment just for that fact, I believe. Okay, bit of background noise happening here. If you've just come in, I'm not in any of my usual spots. I have this fun background behind me. I'm at my brother's house. I had to get off the road, run in to record, we are recording, to be here with you live and on time. So that's why it's a bit wild. It's a house of 20-somethings. So yeah, making me feel old. Few comments going on here in the chat. I don't think I'm catching all of those. I can see some viewers helping out others with answers to questions, which is awesome. Sheridan is saying, great point. I encourage everyone who wants to attend. Others are against it. Good idea to use the waiting room on Zoom. Check it out. Yes, so that is only if you're discussing something that is privileged, you're discussing legal advice that you've been given about a piece of litigation, and the owner that is involved in the litigation against the owner's corporation is actually in the meeting. And always do it politely. Invite that person, first of all, to leave the meeting. I'm in a different situation because I'm going to these meetings as a lawyer, but I haven't ever had a problem when I've explained, look, you do need to let the committee discuss this without waiving their legal privilege. It'll only be 5 minutes. We're just going to put you in the Zoom waiting room and we'll call you back in. We'll bring you back in when we're on to the next motion. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Sheridan. Thank you for the thumbs up. Enjoy your evening as well, Sheridan. All right. So moving on to communications, emails. Now, this is Amelia's question about emails. This is Sean's question about nuisance emails. This was the question that one of our members asked in our member call this week that was released to our members into the library. Passive-aggressive emails. How do we deal with it? Now, I've shown you this awful story coming out of Florida where somebody set fire to his apartment because he was so upset with the homeowners association not taking action. I have told you that it is dangerous, I think, from a legal perspective, to be ignoring nuisance emails, to be ignoring what may be perceived as vexatious or annoying or purposeless communications. However, you as strata managers, as owners, shouldn't be expected to respond to every single little communication. You can't. Physically, you can't do that. So we need to set some boundaries around communications. And I found myself doing exactly this a few weeks ago when I received a communication that was so shocking to me, and it takes a bit to shock me these days, so shocking to me that I employed all of those skills, all of the way of thinking, the strategies that I talk about here on live, that I talk about on the podcast, that I talk about to my clients and in our membership. I found myself employing all of those strategies when I was replying to this email. My first instinct was, oh my gosh, really? Oh, that is not worth responding to. That is how often we want to approach it. But I caution you against that because I have seen communities where communications were ignored. It snowballs, and then all of those communications end up before the tribunal attached to an affidavit, and it just doesn't look good to be ignoring communications. So it is perfectly okay and indeed appropriate when you receive communications that are abusive, that are threatening, that contain defamatory material, whether against you directly or it is abusive, threatening, and defamatory to another committee member or another owner. It is perfectly okay, and I say indeed necessary, to respond to that email and call out that behavior and say, no, that is not on. And I'm paraphrasing the email that I had to send to a person in my community recently. Do not communicate with me in those terms. It is threatening. It is intended to intimidate. It is abusive. It is untrue. What you have said in that email is untrue. It is uncalled for. It is out of line. Whatever it is, the language that you feel comfortable using. If you continue to communicate with me or strata manager, if you continue to communicate with your fellow committee members in this way, then your communications will not be responded to. They will not be responded to. This is a warning. This is a warning. And depending on how bad the communications are, it may be a first and last warning. That's my brother. If you continue to communicate in this way, then your communications will not be responded to. If you would like your communication to be responded to, please communicate politely, respectfully, and accurately. But let's say that the communication I was thinking of was clearly so far out of the ballpark that this person had not read minutes of meetings, was not aware of actually what was going on. So in my response, I was referring this person back. Before you communicate again, please read the minutes of this meeting. Sean, this is your example. Before you communicate with me again, please read my last email where I explained to you that we cannot add motions to the agenda for a meeting where the agenda has already gone out. And if you continue to make this same request after the agenda has gone out, then your communications will not be responded to. So I've said don't ignore these things, but in my view, it is okay to not respond if you've laid those boundaries down and the boundaries keep being broken, keep being transgressed. If you said these are the communications boundaries, and if you don't communicate within those boundaries, we will not respond to you, then in my view, then it's okay to not respond. You've made your position clear. Even better, what you can do is put these communication rules, these communication expectations, these communication boundaries into a bylaw. And I developed precisely this bylaw, I think about 2 or 3 years ago now, because I was hearing this come up again and again. I think it might have been the beginning of the pandemic when everybody suddenly went home in 2020. I was hearing the same complaint from Strata managers, from committee members. The emails are just nuts. We can't keep up. I'm expected to respond to everything. People are rude. They're aggressive. How do we deal with it? And putting a bylaw in place that sets out your communication protocol is essential. Now, I talked about this in some detail in a podcast episode about a year or so ago. It's episode number 259. Rochelle has it here for us. Happily titled, Strata Managers Are Not Punching Bags. Strata managers are not punching bags. And if you go and listen to that episode, you'll hear me talking in these terms that I'm talking today, how you respond to an owner's communication, and this is for committee members as well, that is so far out of line, that is so inappropriate, that is so uncalled for, how you respond to that by setting the boundary and saying, no, not on. This is not how you talk to me. And on the few occasions where I've had to do that, including a few weeks ago where I had to do that in my own community, immediately that person falls into line. And when I say falls into line, they start behaving appropriately as an owner in a residential building should be when they're communicating with others, with their neighbours, with their strata managers. I have had the experience where I have received an email like that, and then I've sent an email in reply saying, not on, and that person's come and knocked on my door and apologized to me. So that happens. And that's a little tip perhaps for those who are living in a building and there are neighbors who are emailing you. This was the example with our member this week who was saying, I'm getting passive aggressive communications. I said, look, if you feel safe, if you feel that it's appropriate, can you go and knock on that person's door and say, hey, hello, I'm here. I'm a human being. I'm here. Do you want to say something? Do we need to talk about this? Did that really mean what I thought it meant? And in my experience, when I've done that, the scenario changes completely. Oh, no, that's not what I know. Of course, we appreciate all the work that you're doing. Yeah, no, I'm sorry my email came across. I'm just really stressed. The baby's crying in the background. That starts to come out. And even if you're not comfortable perhaps making that first approach, I strongly suggest that in your email reply, when you're setting out these boundaries, if you're a resident, you say to that person, perhaps email is not the best way for us to communicate. If you would like to phone me and have this discussion, here's my number. If you would like to knock on my door and have this discussion, then you're welcome to knock on my door anytime. And I bet you 9 times out of 10, that person is not going to come and knock on your door. But you have said, if you want to communicate, if you want to get your message across, if I'm missing something, I'm here and I'm open. So if things do escalate down the track, if this person alleges that you never responded to them or you didn't solve their problem, you've got this paper trail, as we call it as lawyers, paper trail of having a very considered, very polite, very clear response and an invitation that, look, if you want to discuss this more fully, I think we need to meet. I think you should call me. I think that you should knock on the door, and I think we should talk about it. This email thing is not working. At least you have issued that invitation, and it looks great. It looks great if ever there is an issue down the track with involving this resident. Olivia's saying, would this work with WhatsApp groups? Yeah, absolutely. Look, if there's something inappropriate communications happening in WhatsApp groups, the existence of the WhatsApp group may need to be reconsidered, because that's being broadcast immediately to a wider group. It's not just a one-on-one email. So that would concern me if this kind of abusive, harassing, threatening communications are happening in the WhatsApp group. You're perfectly entitled to leave a WhatsApp group if you feel that this is not working for you. And I would simply suggest sending a message saying that I'm now leaving the group because I'm feeling that this communication is not productive. It's not helpful to. It's not in the best interest of all owners what we're discussing here, and I prefer that we discuss on email. The group's not working for me, so I'd just be upfront about why you might be leaving the group. Patrina's saying, can other owners ask for your personal emails? Not quite sure what you mean there, Patrina. So only the books and records of the Owners Corporation include emails, but only where those emails are dealing with Owners Corporation business. So if you're a committee member and you're communicating in your capacity as a committee member about what happened at a meeting, or communicating with a neighbouring owner about their breach of the bylaws, then yes, that's a communication in your capacity as a committee member, and that's a record of the Owners Corporation. Otherwise, if you're emailing Bob next door to have a cup of tea on a Tuesday because you liked his haircut and you want to get to know him better, not an email that needs to be a part of the Owners Corporation's records. Okay, now Sean, I don't know if you're still there tuning in. And let me know if that's helpful. And I know some of your buildings, Sean, may have a communications bylaw in place. I really suggest that you have a look at that when you are dealing with those repetitive requests for things where you've already said as a strata manager, that doesn't comply with the legislation. I can't do that. I've already told you that. I will not tell you again if you send me that same email. I am not going to respond to that. And that is pursuant to Clause 3 of our communications bylaw. That's the beauty of having a communications bylaw. You can refer back to it and it backs you. It backs you as a strata manager to say, hey, we've got a bylaw for that. We have the link to the communications bylaw template that I developed that couple of years ago to help solve these problems. I know a lot of buildings have put it in place. It's one of our most popular templates. I've talked about it a few times on the podcast and on live. And just being able to, it identifies what good communications are. Let's paraphrase it. It identifies what bad communications are, what will be accepted and responded to and what will not be responded to, and gives you that legal backing to be able to ignore or not respond to communications as long as that protocol has been followed. Okay, it is now 5:45. I am going to be late for my dad's 70th birthday dinner. I'm here in my brother's apartment. About 15 minutes into this call, the neighbour across the way decided to, I think it's a leaf blower. I think it's a leaf blower. Were you here on the page when I was talking about leaf blowers a few weeks ago? I think that's what that is. Should I go stick my head out? Should we do some action? No, we're not going to do it. But if you've been hearing that background noise, I apologize about that. It's the nature of live. And I am now going to relieve my brother and his lovely wife, Grace, of my Strata information that is filling their living room. They've all learned a lot about Strata this evening, and let you out into your weekends. So thank you for tuning in. Amelia, if you're coming back around to listen to this, please let me know as well if that information about communications has been helpful. Thank you for asking the question. Thank you everyone for sharing your experiences. I'm going to head off. I may post a little pic here later, and I will catch you probably, yes, around about this time, a bit earlier, next Friday. Enjoy your evenings, everybody. Bye-bye.